circumcision of the heart is a feature that was already spoken about way back in the Torah of Moses. God was commanding the people of Israel way back then, circumcise your heart, don't be stiff-necked. I'm asking for you to love me with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. This is a salvific experience that God was even putting in Israel's, within reach of Israel way back then. So circumcision of the heart is not something new. Don't make that mistake and think that the new covenant is teaching something that's so brand new that the people just couldn't follow along, they couldn't understand it. It's not a brand new standard, right? The Torah has always commanded us to genuinely love a God and to serve him and to be committed to his ways. Yeshua is simply clarifying everything and bringing a context and inserting the objectivity of our faith, namely himself, into what Moses actually was giving the people. So Moses taught the gospel. Heck, even before Moses wrote, Abraham received the gospel, right? Go back and read Galatians, right? Abraham did receive the gospel. Moses taught the gospel. The prophets taught the gospel. So the gospel itself is not new, but what we have in the New Testament is the progressive revelation of Jesus being the object of God's saving grace, that sacrifice to end all sacrifices, as it were, that atoning mechanism that is the fullness, the one that all the others pointed to in the first place, right? Jesus is the type to which the Old Testament is the shadow and that pointed towards, right? Think of like the Torah as this giant spotlight that was aimed at Jesus. And if you have a really dark stage, in my analogy of the spotlight, if you really have a really dark stage, then you can actually trace the beam of the spotlight from the spotlight itself, from the source, and you can trace it all the way to wherever the spotlight is shining on. This is even more dramatic if you introduce like some type of smoke or steam or something into the room, right? You've seen this. You've all gone to like, parades on ice or the ice capades or something like that. And the ice skaters are out there on the skating rink and the whole arena is dark and there's some kind of like a fog machine that's kind of blowing this dry ice type of effect on the skating rink. And so it looks all really kind of misty and smoky, but really kind of ethereal and really wonderful. But they got all these lights and the skaters are out there skating around and doing twists and turns and jumps and things like that. But then usually there's some spotlights somewhere in the arena, usually above the crowd, and they're shining down on the skaters. And what happens is, because of the smoke and stuff, or the dry ice or whatever that effect is that's in the air on the skating rink, you can trace the beam of the spotlight. And what happens is the spotlight is on the skater, but you can actually trace it back up to the source, which is the spotlight too. What's my analogy saying? The Torah is like this giant spotlight, and there's just enough, I'm using air quotes with my fingers, there's just enough dry ice or smoke in the room that we can trace the beam over to Yeshua. Yeshua is the focal point of the spotlight. And so it was designed that way. Well, what's Yeshua doing? He's highlighting the fact that I am the one that the Torah has been pointing to all along. The prophets have been prophesying about me. Look and read and understand Moses if you want to understand me, right? That's just Yeshua's perspective. All right, so let's read about this gospel. The old man needs to die in order for the new man to be birthed. That's not peripheral. That's not a side issue. That's not like, oh, by the way, if you've got time, it would be nice if you could die. This is actually central to the gospel being the gospel itself. I go on to say it's foundational, right? It's of great importance, is my point. These great men of God that we just read about are unabashedly teaching this central truth. Yes, we can agree, I say, that this indeed is sound biblical exegesis. Equally true is the fact that by the first century, these are my own words, right? By the first century, the religious Jewish leaders had so polluted HaShem's genuine form of Torah obedience that only a skeletal frame of what Moshe actually said barely remained visible for the casual observer to see, right? It's no secret that by the first century, the Jewish authorities, the people who were in charge of actually influencing the people, leading the people, helping the people make public decisions as far as communities and things like that, right? So we're talking about scribes and Pharisees and rabbis and proto-rabbis and priests and other leaders in the community. They had developed a worldview and a Jewish system of beliefs, right? Some of it denominational, right? So you had some differences of opinions, just like you have denominations today. But generally speaking, there was this idea that there was copious amounts of oral traditions and maxims and sayings from rabbis and just clever ways of spinning the Bible. Fences that were erected in order to kind of help you make sure you're avoiding violating certain commandments, which in and of themselves are harmless. Do you guys understand what I mean when I say fences? It's like your father knows that you're supposed to be home by midnight, right? For him, in his mind, that's the absolute latest he'll let you come home from the party that you want to go to. But what does he do? He knows that you're prone to drag things out a little bit. So when you ask him, what time do I need to be home, Dad? Instead of saying midnight, he says to you, you need to be home by 11:30. Or he might say 11:15 or something like that, depending on how late you typically run. Which means if he says 11:30, he knows you're going to actually come strolling through the door around midnight, right? You're going to push it a little bit. To you, you think, oh, it's just a little, I was only 30 minutes late. Dad won't be that too terribly upset. But to your dad, he knows without telling you that you actually made it home within the allowable time. And so he's not going to be as harsh on you. He's going to keep telling you 11:30 every time you ask him. But in reality, he knows midnight is the drop dead time.